Hello, I'm Jeff Mearns, and I have the good fortune to serve as the president here at Ball State University. And it's my pleasure and my privilege to welcome you to this conversation. This is a conversation that we're going to have about our university's commitment to inclusive excellence. So I want to begin, Teresa, if I can begin by asking you a question, if I may. As I mentioned, you attended Ball State as an undergraduate student and you received your master's degree here. So tell me a little bit about why you chose to come to Ball State, first as an undergraduate student and then for your master's degree, and what your experience like was as a student at Ball State.
Okay. Ball State University, the greatest university in my backyard, right? Why would I not want to attend Ball State? I started here as an undergraduate and kind of lost focus a little bit and traveled a little bit and came back after I earned my undergraduate degree elsewhere. And I received my master's, like you said, in the College of Urban and Regional Planning, a great program that gave me a great start. And I was able to do a number of things that I continue to give back because of the master's in urban and regional planning. So I love the education that Ball State gave me, and that is continuing to certainly allow me to engage with communities and students. And so that's my passion. And so I love what the university offered me, and it continues to give back as I give back.
So you have some perspective of what it was like to be a student here in the 1990s and now back as a faculty member. How has the experience, how has the climate or the culture on campus changed? Has it changed in those 20 or 25 years?
It definitely has changed. The first day of class in the urban planning program, I was the only female in a group of 8 guys. I said, oh God, am I in the right place? And I said to myself, yes, I think I am. It was very enriching. I learned a lot, but I noticed that there weren't any faculty of color. There weren't any students of color except myself. I'm comfortable in those environments because I grew up in those environments, certainly in my educational pursuit here at Ball State. So I didn't see it being something that was terrible, but I think we can do a little bit better than that. So over the years, I have seen a lot of improvement, and certainly as a part of the President's Advisory Council on Inclusive Excellence, that I have an opportunity to even make it greater or help in that capacity, my contribution. So thank you for inviting me to serve on that council. I think that I've seen a lot of improvement. I'm very happy that the benevolence pledge is not just a pledge for students to say as they come here, but it is a pledge that this institution certainly has embraced. The faculty has embraced it, the students have embraced it as well. And so that is a major piece of the difference that I see happening with the Ball State University, because it's not just a pledge, but people have embraced it. It means something. It's just not a pledge because it's a nice pledge to have, and so it's been. I have seen the growth, and I have seen the compassion from the dean, from the chair, from the students, from the staff. It's all around us, and so we can't help but embrace it, and so that's the big difference that I see.
Great. Well, thank you, Teresa.
You're welcome.
So your mother, Vivian Conley, Vivian Conley was a historic figure here in Muncie and also somebody quite memorable here at Ball State. Tell us about Ms. Conley.
Yeah, I was, as you mentioned her name, I think how proud she would be that we're having this here today and how she would have loved to have been part of it. She was an amazing woman. And she really understood what we're talking about, and that was building relationships with different people and understanding that that's how you move things forward. She didn't have a college degree, and a high school degree. She got her GED when she was like in her 50s and decided that she wanted to pursue her college education. She came to Ball State as a non-traditional student, understood how difficult it was to be a black woman in her 50s trying to get a degree at Ball State. So she established at Ball State a non-traditional student program and said, I'm not the only one. It's hard to maneuver through Ball State. And at the same time, she realized how difficult it was to get black kids from Muncie into Ball State. And so she worked really hard to help kids maneuver through the process of getting into school, staying in school. And that was what she did in her 60s. Before that, she has a whole lot of work that she did on civil rights movements in the community. And she was amazing. And my children are interracial, and she was just and it makes me choke up because she was such an influence on them. She would tell them when they were little, and they're 41 and 36 now. So she'd say, God chose you to be the bridge. And that was, and they took that to heart. They said, you're going to understand both sides and see the difference in cultures. And they both have pursued that as adults. My daughter is chief diversity officer where she works, and my son works with at-risk kids. So they both have pursued that. When she passed, the headline was, Muncie's Mother Teresa passes, because she did so much for this community. And there were hundreds of kids that said, I wouldn't have gone to college if it hadn't been for Vivian Conley. So she was amazing, and I'm just fortunate to have had her in my life.
I was one of those kids. She grabbed my hand, my mother's hand. She dragged us up to the administration building and told the financial aid person to get her in. She probably needs some money, help her out, and then we went back out the door. So yeah. Yes, we did call her Mother Teresa.
Yeah, she was amazing.
She literally built a bridge between and a pathway for other students to come to Ball State, that bridge that we continue to build between the university and the community.
Yeah.
So Jonathan, let me ask you a question. You, as I mentioned, you graduated in 2005, and I understand that you came out to your friends and your family after you graduated. What was it like? What was your experience like on campus?
Yeah, I did come out after graduating, and different from what happens for a lot of people now who come out of the closet, I guess would be the full term for a lot of cases. But when I was at Ball State as an undergrad, things were starkly different than they are now in that respect in terms of what the culture and the climate was for LGBTQ people, and to not just let that be word salad or this acronym that kind of half rhymes and rolls off the tongue, but lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, or questioning people as well. I think it's important to speak those names into existence because some of them are sort of the disappearing even in that people group, even in this population. Bi and trans people often get short shrift or are rendered invisible, so I think that's important to note. That's not the case now at Ball State, and for that I am hugely just joyful. I'm really happy. Things like the forthcoming Multicultural Center give me great hope for what is happening, because when I was an undergrad, there was not an LGBT, there was no Q center on campus. The other public universities in the state, Purdue, IU, so on, had those, and have had those sooner than we have had something like the Multicultural Center. But I'm really excited about this because when I was there, I did not have an edifice, I did not have a building to go to outside of, quite honestly, pursuing Ball State counseling services, which were wonderful. And I think I had a therapist during my undergrad years who was associate director of clinical psychology who partly saved my life because there were some dark times, there were some down times there. But I'm really excited about the path forward because what I experienced was a lot less inclusive. It was outright exclusive. There were so many people coming like me from small town Indiana who had not even had the nomenclature, had the verbiage of what is LGBTQ identity at the time. I was 17 before I knew what to call it on any level, let alone come out. And so that's really important. There were a lot of sheltered people, a lot of sheltered communities at that time, but as more and more people come out on that incremental level, the individual level, I think there is a big difference that can be made in just the visibility given to that and to the other dimensions of difference within that as well. People who have different abilities or disabilities or who are veterans, who are people of color who come out as well. additionally, it's a beautiful set of people across just a range of identities.
And so you've been involved with Spectrum. It's a student organization that's been around a long time. Have you remained engaged with that organization, and do you take advantage of opportunities to support our current students?
You know, I would love to be more involved with Spectrum because I attended some of those meetings as an undergrad, and I'm glad that organization is, I think, 1974 old. So it actually predates me joining the mortal coil. Predates me on this earth, so that is encouraging because that was already at Ball State on some level, even if it was quieter when I was an undergrad perhaps than I feel it even is now. I see it on social media now, which social media, the advent of that, it was coming of age even as I was an undergrad, and moving from having a .edu address on Facebook to anyone being able to join Facebook. Those were very different times. The opportunity, I think, is to have LGBTQ alumni who come back and even through something like the Cardinals Connect online system, mentor LGBTQ undergrad students, maybe match someone up with one who has a similar lived experience. It could be an African American or Black LGBTQ person with an undergrad who has that same identity. And I think there are just wonderful consistencies there in this very plugged in, even virtual world, that we can really make headway there and just connect people, whether it is in person or it is online, however they would communicate. And I would love to be part of that. We may have an LGBTQ affinity group among alumni that could be really good to have in the future. And some of the trappings of that, I think, are already being set.
So Marcia, I want to bring you into the conversation now. You've been with us, I guess, about 18 months, joined us in May of 2019 after a very distinguished and high-impact career at Indiana University. And I've shared with others before when I would tell people, business leaders or elected officials in the General Assembly, I said, you know, we've hired Marcia McGriff as our new Associate Vice President for Inclusive Excellence. And they'd say, how did you persuade Marcia McGriff to come to Ball State? And I'd say two things. One is, I didn't persuade her. She came because of the institution. And secondly, if you want to know the answer to that question, ask Marcia McGriff. So what has your experience been like? As I say, you've been here 18 months. You've made a lot of progress. We've talked a little bit about it. What has it been like to make that transition from an institution where you really must have felt very comfortable?
You know, what attracted me to Ball State and really kind of binds me here is the beneficence pledge. That a public university would have an ethos that is so impactful about being kind and being considerate of others is really important to me. I come from a Catholic background in terms of my education and just my spiritual background. And so I am very drawn to spaces that really hold true and want you to embody specific kinds of values. And Ball State had that for me. So it's not just work. You know, this is a treasure. This is a labor of love, and a labor of the combination of data and story-driven work. And so I think for me, the experience has been the hardest work I've ever done in my whole life. I mean, it's like going home and lifting weights every day. I mean, you work very long weeks, but you know, you don't even feel it because you know that the work that you're doing is impactful, it's meaningful, and that it's spreading throughout the campus. We're doing exactly what I hoped that we would be doing in this particular position.
Right, and the work that you're doing, we announced, I think it was just in January, our university's first Inclusive Excellence Plan, which is really about translating that pledge and those values into very specific strategies and tactics. It's a comprehensive plan, but why don't you share with us what you think are maybe the three most important strategies or goals in that new plan?
I think I would like to reflect first on why it's impactful. And one is, it's the fact that you have a plan, you know, aspirational and operational. And so if you look at the landscape of higher education, you know, some folks don't even have a plan. And so that was really important. It's like, okay, let's do this. We have a plan now. Two,
The document itself is just a document, but what's embodied in it is collaboration. The spirit of collaboration is so important to inclusive excellence. You know, you can't do this work alone. You have to have collaborators. And so the collaboration of the President's Advisory Council for Inclusive Excellence, individuals from every part of our campus at multiple levels in our campus were critical to building that inclusive excellence plan and that inclusive excellence goal. And then third, you know, inclusive excellence work has to start at the top, President Mearns. And so when I interviewed for the position, one of my recommenders called me. He said, hey, I got this call from Ball State. He's from Alabama, so he had to imagine the accent. He said, you know, the president considers himself the chief diversity officer. I was like, really? He says, that is phenomenal. And so President Mearns, I tell you, in terms of having the president of a university consider themselves the chief diversity officer is really important. And I have to count it amongst one of my most important leadership lessons and examples. And so having that leadership from the top has made this work, I think, much more impactful than it probably ever could have been. And so we have a phenomenal provost, we have deans, we have our department heads, we have our support unit heads, we have our phenomenal students and student leaders who have all begun to embody this work. Not just those goals, you know, in a document, but becoming a part of the spirit of what inclusion and what inclusive excellence is and should be, aspirational and operational.
Well, thank you for your kind words, and also thank you for joining us. We wouldn't be making the progress that we are making without you, so we're very fortunate to have you on our team. Thanks, Marcia. So, Teresa, I'm going to ask you a little bit about the Multicultural Center, but first I have to tell you a little story. First time I saw the existing Multicultural Center, I was surprised that it was located on the outskirts of campus in a, dare I say, modest structure. And so I decided that the next time I was going to see Vivian Conley on campus, we had lunch in the village. And I said, Renee, come on, I want to take you on a walk. And so I took Renee over to the Multicultural Center, and I think she looked at it for about 90 seconds and said, I think we need to do better than this. So with Renee's support and the support of the board, we decided to invest $4 million to relocate and build a brand new Multicultural Center. And you were with us on the groundbreaking. That was in homecoming weekend. We did that quite deliberately at the board's suggestion. We scheduled the groundbreaking for the Multicultural Center at homecoming weekend, so not only would the university community be there, but the extended alumni community was there. You were able to join us. You had a chance to say a few words. Tell us what it means to transition that building and those programs from the outskirts of campus to the center of campus.
Back in the day, the Multicultural Center was called the Special Programs House. And I was a student at that time. I helped to set up that library in what's now the Multicultural Center, and called the Malcolm X Memorial Library. And so for that particular program, that house, now the Multicultural Center, to be located in the center of campus speaks volumes. I saw a lot of students go through there, and during that time, a lot of black students weren't able to live on campus. They had to live in Muncie or commuted from Indianapolis or Anderson or wherever they came from. And so at that time, the Special Programs House was their home away from home. I also was a student assistant in the Special Programs House at that time. I worked 10 hours a week, and helped me to have a little pocket change to, you know, drive a car to campus and go back home. So that's a very special place for me. And didn't think, in terms of its location, that it was such a big deal. We were just happy just to have a place, right? But certainly, because of your leadership, and thank you to Renee and the trustees who decided, no, we can do better than this, and that this is a symbol of where we're striving to go in terms of diversity and excellence. In other words, you have put your mouth right in the center. Your action speaks louder, that has spoken louder than your words, and or equally as loud. And so it was a very, very important day to be a part of that groundbreaking ceremony. And again, another full circle moment for me. And to be able to help turn the dirt on that soil is very critical. Now, I don't have any grandchildren, but hopefully one day I do have grandchildren, and I'll be able to share with them that opportunity. A lot of people showed up. They were happy to be there, and I'm glad that it has expanded just from the special program house, which was primarily African Americans, to now a multicultural place for folks to gather. And it speaks volumes, and I'm very proud to say that I'm a part of the Ball State community, and that I was there when it happened. So thank you so much for your leadership in making that happen.
Well, and I think the benefit of the location, as you say, is both symbolic, but also we want that facility and the programs in that facility to be a resource for all of our students. And so by locating it there, we know it will be more accessible to a much wider array of our students. So, Jonathan, I know you're supportive about the new facility, but so I'm going to ask you to comment on that, but also ask you to look ahead. So our strategic plan sets a big stake in the ground for 2040, a long-term plan. What does inclusive excellence look like to you? What does success look like for Ball State University in terms of inclusive excellence in 2040? That's a big question.
It is. Thank you for it. You know, as a former employee resource group chair, I enjoy casting vision. I enjoy the look ahead. Usually it's a 3 to 5 year plan and not 2 decades from now when I'll be closer to 60 as a vintage millennial.
It's great turning 60. Don't worry, it'll be fine.
Looking forward to it. As my great-grandmother would say back in the day from Evansville, Lord willing. But there is, with the Multicultural Center, which I will speak to first, there is such a dynamic opportunity with it being kind of the sort of midpoint on campus, as you said, from an accessibility standpoint. And as Teresa said, just the visibility that gives more to those who are doing all that walkthrough, the campus tours, versus being on the relative fringe. That's really important. And honestly, that relocation of the Multicultural Center was one reason why I gave great credence to the fact, besides that it's a great honor, that I would be nominated for and then join the Alumni Council of my alma mater, because it felt like not just an invitation or a line was being extended as if it was fishing season, but that I was going to be a welcome voice and an appreciated voice on the Alumni Council as another dimension of difference, just reflected in the Alumni Council lineup. So for that, I'm really thankful. And that was one of the catalysts for me wanting to join that organization and take on an additional role in that way. 20 years from now, so 2040, with the strategic plan and inclusive excellence, I think there are a lot of things that will change. You know, the Spectrum LGBTQ group that we talked about earlier will continue to thrive, I would hope, and all the others that represent from alumni and undergrad perspectives, as well as those who are doing their graduate studies and may sort of feel like they're in the interim of life as well, that they're in a bit of an additional incubator period in life, that they will feel that there is just true inclusion on campus and in the Ball State community, whether that is online learning, whatever that looks like in 20 years. Because look at how virtual we're being even in this era of COVID in which we're abiding now, what the just collective community is withstanding. But that there will be a real verve for reaching out to people and seeing people for who they are and not saying things as have been said in the past and even said in my humble small town upbringing in the Midwest, you know, those who would say, I don't see color, or orientation doesn't matter to me, I don't see it, or gender, even within that gender identity, that I don't see it, but that those things will be, no, I see that, I see your color, I see your identity, your gender, your dimensions of difference, and I readily embrace them, and that those things are all just celebrated, increasingly from what they already are today, but that those things would be celebrated, and that those would be, if it's long been said also, the truism of diversity is an invitation to the party and inclusion is being asked to dance, that to take that on a more serious side, and I love fun. I love parties and dancing. I mean, I am a fraternity man, but we have an opportunity to be able to say, You know, diversity is being invited to have a seat at the table, and inclusion is being passed that microphone. And I think that's part of what you're doing with the Inclusive Excellence Roundtables that are happening, and the additional voices that I'm excited to see in the additional installments of that, the additional segments. But I think that is what's really important, that those voices are elevated. And that's something that can increasingly happen when there is equality and there's equity in the era of digital and social media, when just people can carve things out through a YouTube channel or a website or a personal or professional blog or their LinkedIn presence and build their own leadership, build their own thought leadership in those ways as well. And I think what that will look like in 20 years is anyone's guess, because all that just continues to evolve so much. And as one who works in digital and social media by day, just social and websites, I'm excited to see how that just burgeons additionally, and all these new layers continually come to that, and just how people are able to have their voices elevated and own it themselves. A lot of self-made thought leaders, besides those who are given voices from an organizational standpoint.
So Renee, in January 2020, the same month that we released the new Inclusive Excellence Plan, the board also adopted a new unifying statement around freedom of expression. And we define inclusiveness as also embracing and respecting people with different ideas and different opinions. Why was that, and it had been, I think, since sometime in like the 1960s, since the university had adopted or amended the statement around freedom of expression. Why was that important to you and the other members of the Board of Trustees?
I think it was so important because as we pursue this excellence, you can't have that and not also have freedom of expression be part of that, and freedom of thought and freedom of ideas. And as we talk about inclusive excellence, it's inclusive, right? It's not picking and choosing. I want to be inclusive here, but I don't like your opinion or your idea, so you can't be included. And it really has to be thought broadly that everybody gets to participate, and we have to be able to create an environment so that everybody does feel that they can participate. And I mean, I think, you know, our role, hopefully, as a university, and as people come, as you say, you know, from many small town communities in Indiana, because 90% of our students are from Indiana, they come to Ball State, and maybe it's your first time you've ever had the experience of being around people with different backgrounds, different, you know, ethnic backgrounds, different thoughts. And I mean, I think part of you, hopefully, you challenge the beliefs that were given to you when you come to the university setting, and you explore these ideas and thoughts. And I like to think about it as it's just continuous learning, right? If you think about this, not that I have to go into this conversation of changing your thoughts, or I don't want to hear your thoughts. It's let me open my mind and listen to and understand it. I don't necessarily have to change how you're thinking or what you're doing, but I need to understand it, because so much of this is about building relationships and knowing each other as people, not what our stereotypes are or our preconceived notions. If we can set aside our fears, which is I think a lot of gets invoked in people, and open your mind, it's just really a fun place to be, because I have always grown and become a better person as I've learned and had different experiences and made myself uncomfortable. I mean, these are not easy conversations to have, and to move into that area of discomfort and then grow and just see the other side. It's just.
Tell me what you hope, the work that you're doing with so many other people in the extended university community. What does success look like to you in 2040 at Ball State?
I think for me, I think it's important for us all to see ourselves as inclusive excellence. And so when I do the training, a lot of training, I have my participants touch their chest and say, I am inclusive excellence. Not that person over there or that thing over there. I am. I have to learn the tools. I have to build my own tool belt. I have to educate myself. and educate others. And so once you have learned and engaged with this work, I would even say you have a bigger responsibility to share and to enlighten others about their role as inclusive excellence. And so I think that that's what I would hope, that everyone sees themselves as a part of this great and phenomenal work. I know that was kind of the 300,000-foot level, but I really do. And I think that that will help to build empathy, to understand other people's journeys, and to understand and have respect for what people have gone through. You know, like in 2040, I hope that at that time, my grandson's not pulled over and doesn't have terror, you know, move through his body because he's a black man. I hope that, you know, a young woman will be a president of the United States. I hope that so many things will be a part of 20 years from now. But I really do hope that we find a space to understand racism and how hurtful it is and how devastating it is to a community. It's just so important. So for me personally, it's just important now we figure this out. And I hope we're not here 20 years from now asking the same questions, having the same issues over and over again. I just wish history would not repeat itself.
Thank you, Marcia. And Teresa, as Marcia said, this is work. This is work, and our work is not yet done. Tell me what you think we should be doing, what we should be continuing to do to reach the aspirational goal that we have.
What comes to mind is that golden rule: treat others as you want to be treated, right? That is so important. That, to me, is what I've tried to live my life by. If I don't want to be treated a certain way, don't treat others a certain way. Treat people like they matter, like they value, because they do. I think that the journey that Ball State is on in terms of this inclusion of excellence is very important and very critical, and that I think by 2040 that it will still be continuing because people evolve, situations evolve. Anything stagnant is pretty much dead, I would think. And so I would hope and think that the leadership in 2014 is continuing the mantle, if you were, and that it is important and it is critical because I think also it sets Ball State apart. And Ball State certainly to me is a leader in this. It's certainly shown, it's certainly talked about in my circles, and that it's very critical to continue this. I don't think, and this is a positive thing, that it will ever get to where we hope it would be, and that's a good thing because that means that we will continue to work at it, right? I think that's very critical. So hopefully that's what we find ourselves doing, and others that are in leadership roles all the way down to the students and the staff here at the university, is that this work will continue. Because sometimes when you drop the ball, certain things go by the wayside when we think things are better. I just think that Ball State will continue this journey, and it'll be a good thing.
What is our responsibility as a university community to prepare our students so that when they become graduates, they're the ones that are building the bridges, like your mother-in-law, Vivian Conley, building the bridges that bring us together?
Our role is to have our students that come here feel appreciated and that they feel part of it, no matter what your background is. You come here and you feel like you can excel and you can be the best that you can be, and that we help give you those tools to have these conversations and to be able to learn how to express yourself and have debate, but not be so angry about it and everybody go to their own corners and not figure out how do I bridge this, because we have to do this as people and as a country. we can only be better when we all work together. And whatever role that you're in, when you're out in the work role and leadership roles, it's about relationships. It's about bringing people together to solve a problem and to figure out what do we agree upon and figure out how do we make this work versus what, pointing out what we disagree about. And I think it's a whole lot more things that we all agree upon than the things that cause us to pull ourselves apart. And if we can provide our students these opportunities to help themselves grow and become strategic thinkers and problem solvers and critical thinkers and have empathy for people with different backgrounds and different experiences. And again, see that as a way of just continuous learning, that I'm learning about how someone else thinks or what their life is like, and that helps me as a person. I can't necessarily experience it exactly what your life experience it is, but I can have empathy and understanding, and I don't deny your experience. I try to understand it. If we can give our students that, they'll be successful to help make this a better world. And they'll be the bridge that Vivian Conley talked about.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you, Renee, and thank you, Teresa and Marcia and Jonathan. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you for joining us for this conversation. As Jonathan said during one of his remarks, this is the first of 4 conversations that we're going to have about our university's commitment to inclusive excellence. The next conversation will be moderated by our provost, Susanna Rivera-Mills. She'll be talking about how inclusive excellence is infused in our academic programs. She'll be talking with faculty and staff. Roanne Royer-Engel, who is our Vice President of Student Affairs, will host and moderate the 3rd conversation. We'll talk about how we engage our students in this work. And then I'll be back for the 4th conversation to talk about how the work that we do on our campus around inclusive excellence must also continue to strengthen the relationship with the communities that we serve. So that will be a more community-oriented conversation. So again, thank you all for joining me today, and thank you as well.